Okay, we're going to get started if everyone can mute.
Oh, okay.
I want to welcome everyone to Baltimore City Council's Taxpayers Night. This is a meeting of the Budget and Appropriations Committee. I'm Councilman Eric Costello, Chair of the Budget and Appropriations. Let me first introduce the members of the Baltimore City Council with us this evening. We have Council President Brandon Scott. We have Councilman Ed Reisinger, Councilman from the 10th District, Councilman John Bullock from the 9th District, Councilman Bill Henry from the 4th District, Vice Chair of the committee, Councilman Leon Pinkett from the 7th District, Councilwoman Shane Sneed from the 13th District, Vice President, Councilwoman Sharon Green Middleton from the 6th District, Councilman Zeke Cohen from the 1st District, Councilwoman Danny McCray from the 2nd District, Councilman Chris Burnett from the 8th District, Councilwoman Mary Clark from the 14th District.
Thank you.
And we are also joined by Matt Stegman, representing Mayor Jack Young, and Michael Huber and Dominic McAlilly, representing Council President Brandon Scott. Also in attendance, we have representatives from the Bureau of Budget Management Research within the city's Department of Finance, as well as the Baltimore City Public School System. Before we get started, I want to again ask all attendees to mute yourself unless you are speaking, and then again mute yourself after you have completed speaking. Taxpayers Night provides the public an opportunity to comment on City Council Bill 20-0527, the ordinance of estimates for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021, and Council Bill 20-0528, annual property tax for fiscal year 2021. We are here to listen to your comments, but will not respond this evening, but may make a statement that may be needed to guide the public in the proper direction if they are seeking information or guidance for city services. I want to turn it over to Council President Brandon Scott for any opening remarks. Council President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No opening remarks. Just know that this council takes our budget responsibility very seriously. We are going to be looking through this budget very deeply, understanding what COVID-19 is presenting to us as far as challenges, making sure that we come out on the other side of this with a budget that will not place the brunt of COVID-19 on those who are most in need in our city. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. President. So the preliminary fiscal year 2021 operating budget has been recommended at $3.046 billion. This is an increase of approximately 4.1% of 2020 adopted budget. The capital plan is recommended at approximately $823 million. This is an increase of approximately 31.2% above the fiscal year 2020 adopted plan. And we're going to start with two very brief presentations by the Finance Department and Baltimore City Public Schools. And then we will open up the hearing for public comments. Let's start with Bob Seneme from BBMR. Bob, if you could keep your presentation to about 5 minutes, that would be appreciated.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. This is Bob Seneme from the Finance Department. For those of you who were not able to listen in on the 3 o'clock meeting today, we went over a very detailed presentation about the fiscal 21 budget. We plan to make that available online so that folks can go and see some of those details. We also have posted on our website both what we call the executive summary budget book, which is more of a high-level overview of the fiscal 21 budget. And we also have available now today both volumes 1 and volume 2 of what we call the agency detail budget book. So there's a whole bunch of details in there for folks that are interested, any of our citizens, residents that are interested in getting into more details on that. I'll just provide a couple comments on the budget, really brief, so we can get into citizen testimony. For us, the fiscal 21 budget is all about the COVID-19 pandemic. Because of the severe impact that the pandemic has had on our economic situation, we had to make significant changes to the 21 budget. The overall plan, as Councilman said, is about $3 billion overall on the operating side and $823 million on the capital side. On the general fund only, it's actually a reduction of $34.4 million versus the fiscal 20 budget, and a reduction of 182 funded positions versus the fiscal 20 budget. In terms of the highlights of what is still in the budget that we were able to afford this year, I wanted to first just highlight that this budget has $408.7 million of support for city schools. That goes to a whole host of things like operating support and capital support too. We included in the budget this year $30 million as a down payment on what we had expected to be the Built to Learn Act, which was a bill that passed in Annapolis this year for school construction. Because of the pandemic, that bill, we don't expect it to go into effect because the governor had vetoed the Kerwin bill, but we wanted to set the money aside in case that gets taken up, because we do feel like school construction is such a critical part of our needs in the city. We were able to protect youth programming across all services. The budget has two new Baltimore Community Intelligence Centers. Those centers are district level, police district level centers, where we would have police officers working hand in hand with state's attorney personnel and MOCJ personnel to make sure that they have a real-time approach to what's going on in those districts. We're continuing the implementation of the citywide ERP project and cybersecurity investments, which is so critical coming out of the ransomware event we had last year. And we want to acknowledge that there are some trims in this budget, which I'll summarize very quickly. So we had to make $103 million of trims from the budget, and I would categorize those in five different areas. First, we had $15.2 million of savings from revising our financial assumptions. Generally, in a economic situation like we face today, we expect to see lower growth in inflation. We expect to see lower growth on costs for certain commodities like gas. And we had to scale back some of our contributions to reserve funds. That totaled $15.2 million of savings. We also used unspent other sources of money for $12 million. We paused new initiatives that totaled $27.2 million of savings across a variety of agencies. That included the schools, the Charm City Circulator, additional investments in police, and PAYGO capital projects. We are asking our employees, we've reached out to each of our unions, we're asking them to forego their expected pay increase in fiscal 21. And we also will be working with both our unions, all of our unions on both the active side and the retiree side to look at our benefit packages to see if we can find some savings there. The total for employee pay and benefits would be $20.4 million of savings. And then we had to make $28.3 million of what we would call service efficiencies or reductions. We defunded 240 vacant positions. We cut $5.1 million of non-essential spending, and we're proposing to disband 2 fire companies, reorganize a variety of special units in the police department, and eliminate the graffiti removal service in DPW. Just in closing, I want to say that during this process, this hit us quickly and rapidly. We tried to adjust on the fly. We took into account, as we were building this budget, we wanted to make sure that we had a realistic budget that is, responsible for the financial situation we're in, but also wanted to make sure we tried to minimize as best we possibly could the impact on our taxpayers and on our employees. So I will hang on the line and looking forward to listening to comments as they come through. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. I'm going to turn it over to Baltimore City Public Schools now.
Okay, good evening. This is Mary Ann Cox from the Finance Office of Baltimore City Schools. In terms of the information provided in our budget, please note that these numbers were developed pre-COVID. However, also please remember that our state funding formulas are embedded in legislation, and they will not change unless the legislation changes. Not that that can't happen, but it would take a legislative session to do that. We've been advised that there are no plans to have a special legislative session before the January 1 begins. So at this point, our state revenue, which is the largest of our revenue sources, is based on the state aid calculation, which we received from MSDE in January. Typically, before the new year begins, they give us an updated one, but we have not yet received that. Generally, there are variations relating to final enrollment and wealth. The wealth of the local government affects our state aid calculations, and it's a relative wealth calculation. It's based on whether or not our wealth is increasing or decreasing relative to the average of the state. So that affects our funding as well. In terms of appropriations from the city of Baltimore, we've been advised that the city will meet its maintenance of effort requirements, and so that number is included in our budget. We've also been advised that there would be a decrease in the local contribution for risk management. So we will adjust that in our expenditures in the FY21 budget. So we'll have to reallocate from other places. In terms of going forward into the new year, we're mindful of, we don't know when the schools will open and what our instructional delivery platform will look like. So we are developing various scenarios for the different options. Everybody's back, complete remote learning, and a hybrid thereof. So we're working on scenarios for all of them. We are also mindful of the impact of COVID on our enterprise fund, which is the food services operation. The most significant effect that City Schools has had relates to the food services operation, in that it is a revenue source of approximately 90% of the revenue because it's based on meals served. So we are only serving approximately 10% of the meals that we had served pre-COVID. So that is another situation that we need to look at the various scenarios and see what our options might be. So are there any immediate questions?
No, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman, you're muted.
Thank you, sir. We did receive some public comments made via email prior to tonight's hearing. We received emails from Barbara Tabor, Rhonda Hawkins, David Kowalowicz, as well as an unknown individual at info@blackrabbitllc.com. These were all in relation to the city raising the annual property tax rate. I know that the language that was provided in the Baltimore Sun can be a bit confusing, so I wanted to give an explanation. The city is not increasing the property tax rate. The posting is referring to the constant yield tax rate, which is a rate calculated by the state annually and provided to jurisdictions to use as part of their budgeting process. The constant yield tax rate is the tax rate that would maintain the prior year's revenues, so this rate would result in the same property tax revenue in fiscal year 2021 as it was in fiscal year 2020. The state calculated that in order for the city to collect the same revenue in fiscal year 2021, the property tax rate should be 2.1828%. This rate is lower than our current property tax rate due to increased property assessments. The 2.99% referenced in the difference between the constant yield tax rate and the current property tax rate of 2.248%. For fiscal year 2021, The city is maintaining the 2.248% property tax rate, not increasing it. So I want to be clear that property taxes are not proposed to be increased under this budget. We will now begin to take public testimony. Each caller will be allowed 2 minutes to speak. We will start with the WebEx users who have raised their hand in WebEx using the raise hand function. Next, I will go through all of the users who have called into the hearing. When it is a caller's turn to give testimony, they will hear 2 beeps on their phone and they can speak. If a caller does not want to provide testimony, they simply need to say that they don't want to provide testimony after the 2 beeps. Please note that after 2 minutes, I will politely interrupt you and ask you to wrap up if you haven't completed your comments. With that, Marguerite, if you would take the first caller. Councilman Pinkett, I'm going to turn the hearing over to you for a few minutes as I need to restart my computer. So with that, Marguerite, please get and Councilman Pinkett, Vice Chair Pinkett, if you could please make sure that you're timing callers for 2 minutes apiece.
Got you.
Hi, is that me? Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm Catherine Klosek. I'm a board member with Friends of Patterson Park. Public parks have served as a venue for people to maintain their physical and mental health during the coronavirus crisis, while rec centers have served as meal sites for children who are suddenly out of school. Due to this critical role as open-air recreation sites and familiar meal service locations, not just during this crisis, but year-round, current and future Baltimore City elected officials need to prioritize and preserve funding for Baltimore City rec and parks. For those who may point to looming budget shortfalls or recent states of violent crime and say, we have bigger problems to worry about than parks, I would argue that investing now in green space and recreation must be considered as part of a solution to revive our city, to curb violence, and to provide opportunities for all of our children, teens, and young adults. Parks are the only escape for many of Baltimore's residents who do not have access to other means for respite and recreation. Gwynns Falls Leakin Park in West Baltimore and Patterson Park in East Baltimore have both seen a huge increase in visitors since the onset of COVID-19 restrictions. Considering the critical role of parks in this crisis and year-round, the Recreation and Parks Department operations budget needs to be prioritized in fiscal year 2021 and going forward to properly fund maintenance and operations of our parks and recreation centers. Thank you.
Thank you. Marguerite, can you call the next person?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
My name is Scott Richard, and my remarks will center on the recreation. After years of inadequate budgets at the recreation, it's time to correct that inadequacy. Baltimore citizens receive all the benefits, quality park and recreation system. The Recreation and Parks Department's operations budget is simply insufficient. For instance, in 2016, Baltimore Recreation and Park operation spending was $7 per resident. Other high-density cities like Baltimore spent on average $107. This is a huge disparity, and those same budget shortfalls continue today and have affected the city's ability to properly manage and maintain its parks and recreation centers. For those that argue that city budgets need to tackle other high-priority issues like crime reduction, improved property values, health disparities, and the environment, I argue that parks and recreation centers have a positive effect on each of those high-priority issues. For instance, studies indicate that well-maintained and managed parks are associated with lower crime rates. Studies in Baltimore and in other cities also indicate that well-maintained and managed parks increase property values and tax revenue. Other studies indicate that access to parks has positive impacts on both physical health and mental health. Lastly, numerous studies show the positive effects of urban parks on the environment. It's time to start properly funding our recreation and parks department so that we can take advantage of all the benefits of parks and recreation centers to improve the quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
The next caller, do you have any testimony for the committee? You're unmuted. Okay, I'll go to the next one. Next caller. I'm going to the next one. Next caller. Going to the next one. Next caller.
Yes, I have a question about the helicopters that are flying in 21210. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. At this time, we are just receiving testimony from the public. If you'd like to elaborate on your concerns, the committee will hear them and then maybe be able to address them at another forum.
I'll address it at another time. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, that's the last caller unless someone forgot to raise their hand.
Mr. Chair, I turn the hearing back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Marguerite, so that concludes everyone on WebEx.
Everyone who raised their hand and all call-ins.
Like, there's no one else?
There's no one else. I can go down the list of the people who are here that did not raise their hand if you would like, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. Ms. Ahart, do you have anything to say?
I do not have anything to share. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kosak, Catherine, do you have anything you want to say or share with the committee?
Oh, I shared. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Lillian, do you have anything you would like to share with the committee? Ms. Lillian, Nguyen. Okay. Oh, she has her hand up. Let's see. Okay. Go ahead. Ma'am, sir, Miss ALHERI, do you have anything you'd like to share with the committee?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Onini Alheri. I live in the 11th district. I don't have much to say. I have more questions than comments, but since you all aren't able to answer questions, I just wanted to use this platform to again encourage, or rather ask you to encourage the mayor to really take a look at this proposed budget. I was able to see a presentation last week that compared the preliminary 2021 budget pre-COVID and post-COVID, and noticed some things that were pretty alarming, including a reduction in funding for Baltimore City Public Schools by $93 million. That sounds crazy to say out loud. I hope that is wrong. But that was the information I received. I also saw that there was an increase in police spending by another $4 million. I did this last year and spoke about how I would really like the police budget to be reduced. I know that that is almost entirely up to the mayor, but as our representatives, I really urge you to reconsider giving more and more funding to the police. I don't think that that is going to guarantee public safety for anyone. I think if it did, it would have by now. And yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. There's not a reduction to city schools this year, so I'm not sure about the presentation, but I think you said you live in the 11th district, which I represent. So if you'd like to send me an email with all of your questions, I will make sure that you get answers to all of those. You can reach me via email at eric, ERIC, dot COSTELLO at baltimorecity.gov. Next caller. Yes, you're welcome, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Gear, we cannot hear you. Mr. Chair, we cannot hear him. Shall I move on?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Ms. Cornman, do you have anything you would like to share with the committee?
Thank you. Can you hear me? I'm the acting chair of the Baltimore City Commission on Aging, and I just wanted to thank you for having this hearing and to remind everyone, not sure what the interference is from, about older adults and continuous funding and support for the Division on Aging. Thank you very much. Did you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we heard you.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Ms. Sarah Milliam, Sarah, do you have any comments?
No, this is Sarah Parnell. I'm from the Department of Planning. I was just listening. Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you. Miss Andy, M-A-U-N-G, do you have any comments?
No, ma'am, thank you.
Thank you. And the last person on the list, Mr. Chair, is Miss E-G-O-R-V-A. Do you have any comments you would like to share with the committee? Hello? Mr. Chair, we cannot hear. Oh, wait, let's do something. Hello? We're finished, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, ma'am. I'd like to thank everyone for participating this evening. Your comments have been heard by the president and members of the city council. We appreciate you taking time to share your thoughts on this budget. City council may consider the adoption of the fiscal year 2021 tax rate at the meeting of the city council on Monday, June 15th at 5 p.m. Thank you. We're now in recess.